At 2:06 a.m., Celine Cross didn't slap the maid. She did something colder. She pointed to the nursery door with one manicured finger and said, "Out, before you contaminate my children with your desperation." But what Celine didn't know was that the twins had been awake for minutes, silent as tiny judges, listening. And then the smaller twin turned his head, stared at Celine with an impossible seriousness, and said one word, clear enough to split the air. "Mum." Celine's smile froze. Because he wasn't reaching for her. He was reaching for the maid. Nina Morales stood in the doorway holding a folded blanket, cheap uniform collar pinching her throat, hands suddenly too heavy to lift. The word hung between them like a loaded weapon that didn't fire. It waited. Celine's eyes widened, then narrowed, as if she could turn panic into rage by sheer will. "That's impossible," she whispered. "He's confused." But the other twin, the one Celine called the quiet one, lifted his hand, pointed toward Nina with a trembling finger, and said the same word again, softer, like it hurt. "Mom." Celine's breath caught, and for the first time in years, the millionaire wife of Damien Cross looked like a woman who could bleed. Nina didn't move. Because if she moved, she might fall into a truth she had spent her whole life outrunning. Celine stepped forward, voice sharp. "Get out," she hissed. "Now." Nina swallowed hard. "Mrs. Cross, they're just babies. Celine cut her off. "They repeat sounds. You've been hovering around them like a parasite. You've trained them." Nina flinched. "I would never." Celine's eyes glittered. "You would do anything. People like you always do." And that was when Damien Cross entered the nursery, pulled from his office by the sound of raised voices, and saw his wife standing like a queen on the edge of a cliff. "What's happening?" Damien asked. Celine didn't look at him. She didn't dare. Her gaze stayed locked on Nina, as if Nina had become a mirror that might expose her. "The maid has to go," Celine said. "Tonight." Damien stared. "Nina? At 2 a.m? Celine's voice sharpened. "She's unhealthy for the boys. She's making them clingy." Damien looked at the twins. Both were awake now, wide-eyed and restless. Both were reaching, not for Celine's arms, but toward Nina with tiny hands that trembled like memory. Damien's jaw tightened. "They're babies, Celine." Celine snapped. "Exactly. They're impressionable. And she's been too close." Nina's heart hammered. She hadn't meant to be close. She had meant to be invisible. But invisibility was impossible when you were the one who warmed bottles at midnight, the one who held fevers in the dark, the one who sang when the mansion's silence felt like a threat. Damien took a slow breath, eyes moving between his wife and the maid. "Celine." "Why now?" Celine's smile returned, thin and controlled. "Because I'm their mother, and I'm finally taking control." Nina's stomach tightened. Because she had heard a version of those words before, years ago, in a different corridor, under different fluorescent lights. A woman taking control. A woman deciding who got to be called mother. Celine walked toward Nina, close enough that Nina could smell expensive perfume and something sharper underneath. "If you have any dignity," Celine whispered, "you'll leave quietly." The twins whimpered, the sound of two hearts beginning to panic, and then the smaller one said it again, not to Celine, not to Damien, to Nina. "Mum." Damien's face went pale. Celine's eyes flashed. Nina's knees threatened to give out. Damien turned slowly to Celine. "Celine," he said quietly, "are you scared?" Celine stiffened. "Scared? Of a maid?" Damien didn't answer. He looked at Nina instead. "Nina, what's going on?" Nina's lips trembled. "Sir, I don't know. And that was the first lie of the night. Because Nina did know something, even if she didn't have words for it yet. She had known it the first time she saw the twins' faces and felt her stomach drop with a recognition that didn't make sense. She had known it the first time she noticed the tiny crescent-shaped birthmark behind one twin's ear, identical to a faint crescent on Nina's own shoulder. She had known it the day Celine fired the first nanny after 1 week, saying she asked too many questions. Nina had known something was wrong. She just hadn't known it was her. 2 weeks earlier, Nina was still the kind of maid nobody remembered to thank. She came to the Cross mansion through an agency that promised stability, housing, and a paycheck that could keep her mother's lights on. She took the job because her family lived one emergency away from drowning. She took it because dignity didn't pay for medicine. The Cross mansion was not just rich. It was a fortress of glass and marble overlooking the city, where the air smelled like polished wood and money, and the quiet felt enforced. Damien Cross built software that made other billionaires richer. Quiet power. The kind that didn't need to shout. The kind that could end people with contracts and still sleep at night, because paperwork made cruelty look clean. Celine Cross was visible power, the kind that turned privacy into a brand. Gala photos, charity boards, perfect hair, perfect marriage, perfect miracle twin boys. When Celine announced her pregnancy, the press called it fate. Inside the mansion, miracle was a word Celine used to cover something rotten. The nursery wasn't designed for babies. It was designed for cameras, perfect lighting, perfect furniture, perfect angles for photos, perfect staging for the story Celine wanted the world to believe. And there were rules. No touching the twins, unless instructed. No singing in Spanish, Nina's mother tongue, because Celine said it sounded low class. No photos, no voice notes, no talking about the birth, no asking questions about the clinic, because Celine controlled the story. But babies didn't care about stories. They cared about bodies, voices, warmth, safety. And Nina, despite trying to stay invisible, became the one who gave them those things. Celine hated that. Nina noticed it in small ways. Celine would enter the nursery, see one twin calm in Nina's arms, and her smile would tighten. Celine would take the baby, pose for 10 minutes, then hand him back with a sharp whisper. "Don't let him get used to you." Nina would nod, pretending the words didn't pierce her, but the twins got used to her anyway. Because Celine's love was scheduled, Nina's care was constant. Damien noticed too, though he pretended he didn't. He was often away in his office wing, building empires on screens. But sometimes he came into the nursery late at night, eyes tired, and watched Nina rock a crying twin back to sleep. He never said much, but his gaze lingered like he was trying to understand what he had purchased and what he had missed. Then one afternoon, while cleaning Celine's private dressing room, Nina found something that made her breath stop. A locked drawer. Slightly open, inside, under silk scarves and jewelry boxes, was an envelope labeled in thick marker. "Do not open." Nina should have closed it. She didn't, because the human mind doesn't walk away from a door that is already half open. Inside was a photocopy of an ultrasound report and a printed receipt from a private clinic. The name on the report was not Celine Cross. It was Nina Morales. Nina stared until her vision blurred. Her own name. On an ultrasound report. She flipped the paper over and saw a note clipped to it in Celine's handwriting. "Destroy the originals. Keep the copy." Insurance. Insurance. That was what Celine called another woman's pregnancy. Nina shoved everything back and closed the drawer just as footsteps sounded in the hallway. Celine's voice drifted in, calm and cutting. "Did you clean the nursery bathroom yet? I hate streaks." Nina forced her voice steady. "Yes, ma'am." Celine stepped into the dressing room, eyes scanning as if she could smell disobedience. Her gaze landed on Nina's hands. Why are you shaking? Celine asked softly. Nina swallowed. Just tired. Celine smiled. Thin. Don't get tired in my house. Tired people make mistakes. Those words stayed with Nina for days. And now, at 2:06 a.m., with Celine ordering her out and the twins calling her mum, Nina understood what Celine really meant. Mistakes weren't accidents. Mistakes were openings. Damien stepped closer to Nina, voice quiet. Nina, did you see something you weren't supposed to see? Celine snapped. Damien. Damien didn't look away from Nina. Answer me. Nina's throat tightened. She couldn't say it. Not yet. Not with Celine in the room, watching like a guard dog. So she whispered, I think there are things in this house that don't add up. Celine laughed sharply. Things don't add up because you're poor and paranoid. Nina flinched. Damien's jaw tightened. Celine, enough. Celine turned to him, eyes flashing. You're defending her? Damien's voice stayed steady. I'm listening to her. Celine's smile turned dangerous. Then listen to this. If she stays, I'm leaving. Damien froze. Celine continued, voice like velvet around a blade. And when I leave, the press will eat you alive. The board will panic. Your investors will run. Your perfect family image collapses. You lose everything. Nina's breath caught. That was Celine's real power. Leverage. Damien stared at Celine like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. So this isn't about the boys, he said quietly. This is about you. Celine's eyes narrowed. Of course, it's about me. I'm their mother. The twins whimpered again. One reached toward Nina, and then a sharp knock hit the nursery door. 3 knocks. Urgent. Damien turned. Who is it? Marcus, head of security, stepped in, face tight. Sir, we have a problem. Celine's eyes flashed with irritation. Not now. Marcus ignored her and spoke to Damien. Someone accessed the nursery cameras from outside the network. The feed was briefly rerouted. Damien's face hardened. Rerouted to where? Marcus swallowed. We don't know yet. But the access came from inside the house. Silence fell. Nina watched Celine's posture stiffen for a fraction of a second. Damien noticed too. He looked at Celine and asked quietly, Who else has admin access? Celine's smile returned instantly. You. Me. Marcus, that's it. Marcus hesitated, then said, And the medical liaison. Damien's brow furrowed. What medical liaison? Celine's eyes flashed. Marcus, leave. Marcus didn't move. Damien's voice turned cold. Celine, what medical liaison? Celine lifted her chin. A specialist. Postpartum care. You're busy. You don't read the staff memos. Damien's eyes narrowed. I didn't read memos because I trusted you. Celine's smile sharpened. Then keep trusting me. Damien stared at her for a beat, then looked at Nina. Go to your room, he said softly. Lock the door. Don't pack. Don't leave the property. Celine snapped. Damien, I said she's out. Damien didn't look at Celine. And I said she's safe. Nina backed out of the nursery with her heart hammering. As she walked down the corridor, she heard Celine's voice behind her, soft and deadly. Those boys will forget her by morning. Nina swallowed hard, because she knew that wasn't true. Babies might forget faces. They didn't forget comfort. And Nina couldn't forget the ultrasound paper with her own name on it. She reached her small staff room, locked the door, and sank onto the bed. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. You have 1 hour to leave the estate. If you stay, you'll never see daylight again. Nina's blood turned to ice. She stared at the message, then at the locked door, then at the tiny window looking out onto the dark garden. 1 hour. Someone was counting down. And Nina understood the worst part. This wasn't Celine firing her. This was someone erasing her. She stood, trembling, and realized she needed proof that couldn't be snatched from her hands. proof that could survive, even if she didn't. And she knew exactly where to look. Because Celine wasn't only controlling the nursery, Celine was controlling the house's medical wing. And the house's medical wing was where Nina's life had been packaged like a product. The house's medical wing sat at the far end of the Cross estate, behind a hallway Celine rarely walked because she didn't like being reminded that her perfection depended on needles and paperwork. Nina slipped through the service corridor with her heart hammering, guided by memory and fear. She kept her shoulders tight, her steps silent, her phone clutched in her palm with the screen dark. One wrong sound, one wrong creak, and the night would swallow her. But what she didn't know was that someone was already watching her route. And the moment she reached the medical wing door, she felt it, like a cold hand closing around the back of her neck. The keypad glowed faintly. Nina didn't know the code. But she knew something else. In rich houses, locks were designed to keep poor people out. Keys were designed to keep the rich from ever thinking about locks. Marcus, head of security, had a key card. Nina had seen it swing from his belt 100 times. She'd watched him leave it on counters, on desks, on kitchen islands, confident no one would dare. Weeks ago, when she was still only suspicious and not hunted, Nina had pressed a bar of soap around the keycard's edge to capture the ridges. She didn't even know why she did it at the time. She told herself it was paranoia. Now, it was survival. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the crude copy she'd made from the soap mold, and slid it against the reader. The light blinked red. Nina's breath caught. She tried again. Red. Her hands began to shake. Then, from down the corridor, she heard footsteps. Not slow. Not casual. Fast. As if someone had been waiting for her to try. Nina's throat tightened. She backed away from the door, eyes scanning, mind racing. She could run back to her room, but that would be predictable. She could run outside, but the gates would be locked. She could hide. But hiding was what victims did before they disappeared. No. Nina forced her body to move forward instead, deeper into the wing. If the main door code had changed, there was another way in. There was always another way in. The people who built cages also built private exits. She spotted it, a narrow side corridor for staff deliveries, a utility door with an old-fashioned keyhole, the kind that had been installed before keypads existed. The kind that rich people forgot about. Nina's fingers found the key ring on her belt, her tiny service keys. Most were useless for this wing. But one was older. One was marked with a faded tag that read Med. Nina had never asked why she had it. Now she didn't have time. She slid the key in. It turned. The door opened with a soft click that felt louder than a scream. She slipped inside and shut it behind her, pressing her back to the wood, holding her breath. Footsteps rushed past the corridor outside. Voices, low and urgent. She's not in her room. That means she's looking for it. Find her before she talks to him. Nina's blood turned to ice. It wasn't just Celine. It was a team. She moved forward through the dim utility corridor, the air smelling like antiseptic and metal. The medical wing felt less like part of a home and more like a private clinic built for secrets. And then she saw something that made her stomach drop. A small camera in the corner of the ceiling, angled not toward equipment, but toward the hallway itself. Not for safety. For monitoring. For control. Nina kept moving, deeper, toward a storage cabinet labeled Archive. A lock hung from it, but the padlock was cheap, almost insulting, like it was meant to discourage curiosity, not stop it. Her hands shook as she tugged it. It popped open too easily, which meant someone wanted this cabinet opened by the right person, or someone assumed no one like Nina would ever try. She pulled the cabinet doors apart. Inside were folders, neatly labeled. Not with medical terms. With names. Employee names. Staff names. Women's names. Nina's breath caught as her eyes landed on one folder in bold black text. Morales. Nina. Her hands went numb. She slid it out. The folder was thicker than it should have been for a maid's employment paperwork. Inside were not cleaning schedules. There were medical release forms, confidentiality agreements, and a single hospital photograph. A woman in a clinic bed holding newborn twins. Her face turned slightly, but the eyes were unmistakable. Nina's eyes. Nina's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She flipped the photo over, the twins' birth date, and a note written in Celine's handwriting. Subject cooperative. Memory suppression effective. Nina's blood ran cold. Memory suppression. Her vision blurred as her body tried to reject the meaning. She felt the floor tilt. A hot wave of dizziness rolled through her, like her brain was trying to protect itself by shutting down. But what cut through the dizziness was a new sound. A phone vibrating. Not hers. A phone inside the folder. A cheap burner phone taped to the inner flap like a hidden organ. Nina stared at it, horrified. The screen lit up with a single incoming call. Unknown. Nina didn't answer. She couldn't. Because the phone vibrated again, and the screen flashed a message instead. If you open this, it's too late. Nina's throat tightened. Then footsteps echoed inside the medical wing. Closer. Not outside now. Inside. Nina shoved the folder into her coat, slammed the cabinet doors shut, and backed away. Heart pounding. She slipped into the nearest room, a small exam space with a stainless steel sink and cabinets that smelled like alcohol wipes. She hid behind the door, one hand over her mouth to silence her breathing. The door handle turned. The door opened. Marcus stepped in. And he wasn't alone. A woman followed him, tall, composed, wearing a white coat without a hospital badge. Her hair was neat. Her voice was calm in a way that made Nina's skin crawl. The woman said, "If she found the file, we're out of time." Marcus hissed. Celine said she'd handle it. The woman replied, "Celine is emotional. We need clean resolution." Marcus's throat moved. "You mean an accident?" Silence. Then the woman said, "I mean silence. Permanent, if necessary." Nina's stomach twisted so hard she thought she might vomit. Marcus said, "Damien is suspicious. He asked about your access." The woman's voice sharpened. "Then distract him. Give him a believable story." Marcus swallowed. "Like what?" The woman paused, then said, "Affair." Nina's blood turned to ice. The woman continued, "Clinical. The maid and the husband. It's a story people swallow easily. It explains why he defends her. It explains why she's in the nursery. It explains why the babies say what they say." Marcus's voice was tight. "But the babies." The woman cut him off. "Babies can be coached. Audio can be edited. You'll leak a nursery clip. Make it sound like she whispered the word. Make it sound like she trained them." Nina's heart slammed. False lead. Not random. Designed. Marcus exhaled. "And if she doesn't break?" The woman's voice dropped. "Then we make her break. We can always adjust dosage." Nina's breath caught. Dosage. Memory suppression. The missing months in her life suddenly felt like a room with the lights turning on. The woman said softly, "Where is Celine?" Marcus answered with the twins. "She wants to remove the maid tonight." The woman nodded. "Good. Remove the problem. Then she can play grieving mother tomorrow when the story breaks." Marcus hesitated. "What about the birthmark?" The woman's tone turned irritated. "Marking is sloppy. But it doesn't matter if we control the narrative. The public doesn't care about birthmarks. They care about scandal," Marcus said. "And Evelyn?" The woman went still for half a beat. "Evelyn wants results. She doesn't tolerate delays. Evelyn." Nina's blood went cold. So Celine wasn't the top. Evelyn was. The woman and Marcus walked out, their footsteps fading. Nina stayed frozen behind the door, trembling, the folder pressing against her ribs like a living thing. Then her phone vibrated in her pocket. Unknown number. A text appeared. Run to Damien's office. Now. Nina's chest tightened. Was it a trap? Or was it the one crack in their system? Someone inside helping. She had no time to decide. She ran. She moved through corridors like a shadow, taking service routes, avoiding cameras where she could, heart hammering so loud she felt sure someone would hear it. She reached Damien's office wing and knocked once, then shoved the door open. Damien stood inside, jacket half on, phone in his hand, face tight with stress. He turned sharply. "Nina, I told you to lock your door." Nina held up the folder with shaking hands. "Sir, please." Damien's gaze landed on the folder, then on Nina's face, and something in his expression shifted from irritation to alarm. "Close the door," he said. Nina closed it. Damien took the folder and opened it. His face changed as he saw the hospital photo. His mouth went dry. "This is you!" Nina's eyes filled with tears. "Yes." Damien flipped it over and saw Celine's note. His jaw clenched. Memory suppression effective. He looked up slowly, eyes dark. "Celine did this," Nina whispered, trembling. "Not alone. Marcus and a doctor," they said. Clean resolution. Damien's hands tightened into fists. He stepped to his computer and pulled up his secure archives. "Celine told me it was if," Damien said, voice low. "She told me the clinic was private. She told me records were sealed." He paused, eyes narrowing. "But I never saw originals." Nina's throat tightened. "And I never consented." Damien stared at the file again, then at Nina, and said quietly, "You will not be erased." Nina swallowed, voice breaking. "She said she'll ruin you." Damien's expression didn't soften. "Let her try." Nina stared. Shocked, Damien looked at her and said, "Do you know why I'm rich? Because I don't fold when someone threatens me with embarrassment." Then his phone buzzed. "Celine," Damien answered on speaker. Celine's voice was sweet. "Darling, where are you?" Damien's tone was controlled. "In my office." Celine paused for half a breath. "Good. I need you to sign something. Termination." For Nina, Damien's eyes narrowed. "Why the urgency?" Celine laughed lightly. "Because she's unstable. She's been telling staff she's the twins' mother. She's scaring everyone." Nina's stomach turned. Celine continued, voice sharpening. "And Damien, the police may need to be involved. She tried to enter the nursery after you told her to leave." Damien's gaze snapped to Nina. "Attempted kidnapping." Damien mouthed the word silently, and Nina felt cold spread through her. Celine was building the story. Damien's voice turned icy. "Celine, come to my office. Now." Celine's voice paused. "Why?" Damien didn't blink. "Because I'm not signing anything until I hear your story in person." Celine's voice softened. "Damien, don't let a maid manipulate you." Damien's tone didn't change. "Now." The line went dead. Nina's breathing quickened. "She's coming." Damien nodded once. "Good." He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small recorder. He pressed a button. "I want you to tell me everything," Damien said. "Every detail. Starting with the first thing that felt wrong." Nina's throat tightened. She told him about the ultrasound paper with her name, about the birthmark behind the twins' ear, about Celine firing the first nanny for asking questions, about the threatening texts, about overhearing Marcus and the doctor planning to frame her with an affair narrative and a nursery audio edit. Damien listened, face hardening with every word. Then a knock hit the door. 3 sharp knocks. Damien's assistant's voice trembled through the wood. "Mr. Cross, Mrs. Cross is here." Damien looked at Nina. Stand behind me. Nina obeyed, heart pounding. Damien opened the door. Celine entered like a storm wearing silk. She smiled at Damien, then her gaze slid to Nina and sharpened into contempt. Still here, Celine said softly. How disappointing. Damien closed the door. Celine's eyes flicked to the folder on the desk, to the recorder, to Nina's pale face. Her smile tightened. What is this? Damien held up the hospital photo. Explain. Celine froze. For a fraction of a second, the millionaire wife looked like someone caught in a mirror. Then she recovered, laughing lightly. That's absurd. Damien's voice was ice. Is it? Celine stepped forward, eyes glittering. Damien, you don't understand. She stole that file. She's unstable, Nina whispered, trembling. It's my life. Celine's gaze snapped to Nina. Your life? You clean toilets. Nina flinched, but Damien's voice cut through. Enough. Celine turned back to Damien, softening her tone. We have to protect the boys. She's dangerous. Damien slid the folder across the desk. Memory suppression. Medical forms I never signed. How did this happen? Celine's eyes flashed. I did what I had to. Damien's breath caught. So you admit it? Celine's smile sharpened. I admit nothing. This is between women. You wouldn't understand. Nina's voice cracked. You stole my body. Celine's eyes glittered. I rented it. The word hit the room like a slap. Damien's face went pale. Celine. Celine lifted her chin. You wanted heirs. You wanted the perfect family image. I gave it to you. Damien's hands trembled. You told me you carried them. Celine's smile turned thin. I carried the story. That's what matters. Nina felt her knees weaken, because now she understood why the babies had called her mum. They weren't confused. They were correcting the story. Celine leaned closer to Damien, voice lowering. If you push this, the press destroys us. Investors run. Your company bleeds. Do you want that? Damien stared at her. Do you want to keep my children by erasing someone else's life? Celine's eyes hardened. This is how this family survives. Damien's voice dropped. This is how it rots. Celine's gaze flicked toward the door. Marcus, she called, too calmly. The office door opened immediately. Marcus stepped in. Nina's stomach dropped. Marcus's gaze was flat. Yes, ma'am. Damien's eyes narrowed. Close the door, Marcus. Marcus hesitated, then closed it. Damien's voice was cold. How long have you worked for Celine instead of me? Marcus's jaw tightened. Sir, Celine cut in, sweetly. Marcus is loyal to this family. Damien's eyes sharpened. Loyal to you. Celine smiled. Same thing. Damien's voice rose slightly. Get out, Celine. Celine's eyes glittered. Or what? Damien stared at her, then said quietly, or I call the police. Celine laughed. And tell them what? That your wife arranged surrogacy? That you benefited? That you kept a maid who claims she's your children's mother? You'll burn with me. Shame again. The leash again. Celine saw Damien hesitate and leaned in. Exactly. She whispered. You can't win. Then a scream echoed from down the hallway. Not a woman's scream, a baby's scream. Damien's head snapped toward the nursery wing. Celine's eyes widened, then narrowed. Damien's voice turned sharp. What did you do? Celine's smile returned, thin and triumphant. I secured the asset. Damien shoved past Celine and Marcus, threw open the office door and ran. Nina ran after him. They sprinted down the corridor toward the nursery. The door was open. The nanny stood inside, shaking, eyes wide. One bassinet was empty. Damien's voice broke. Where is he? The nanny whispered, terrified. Mrs. Cross. She took one twin. She said you approved it. She said it was an emergency doctor appointment. Nina's knees went weak. Celine had taken a baby. Not both. One. Because one baby was enough to control everything. Damien turned, breathing hard, eyes blazing. Celine stood in the doorway. calm as if she were holding a purse instead of a child's future. "You wanted proof," Celine said softly. "Now you'll do what I say to get your son back." And in that moment, Nina understood the cruelest truth of all. The babies weren't just evidence, they were leverage. And Celine had just proven she would rather kidnap a child than lose control of a story. Celine's voice stayed soft, controlled, almost tender, as if she were offering Damien a business deal instead of holding a child's life hostage. "Here are my terms," she said. "You will fire Nina. You will sign a confidentiality agreement. You will publicly stand by me. And you will never say the word surrogate again." Damien's eyes didn't blink. "And my son?" Celine smiled. "When I have those signatures, you'll get him back." Nina's throat tightened. She felt the room narrowing, squeezing the air out of it. Damien took one slow breath. "Where is he right now?" Celine's smile sharpened. "Somewhere you can't reach without me." Nina saw Damien's jaw tighten, saw the violence of restraint in his posture. Damien was a man built to control systems, and Celine had just turned his child into a system he couldn't control. Damien's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He looked at the screen and went still. Nina watched his face change, watched his eyes darken. Celine tilted her head slightly like she already knew what the message said. Damien read it aloud, his voice low. "If you call police, the baby disappears." Nina's blood turned cold. Celine's smile returned, satisfied. "You see, we can do this quietly." Nina's voice cracked. "He's a baby. He needs his brother." Celine's eyes glittered. Babies need silence. Silence is stability. Damien's voice was ice. "Bring him back," Celine laughed softly. "Or what?" Damien stepped closer. "Or I burn this house down with truth." Celine's eyes narrowed. "You won't. You love your reputation too much." Damien's gaze didn't move. "And you love your control too much." Celine's smile tightened. Damien turned to Marcus, who stood in the nursery doorway like a guard stationed between father and child. "Lock the gates," Damien ordered. "No car leaves." Marcus hesitated. Celine's gaze snapped to Marcus, a silent command. Marcus's throat moved. "Sir, we can't." Damien's voice rose, sharper. "Now." Marcus didn't move. That was the answer. Nina felt the betrayal land like a punch. Damien stared at Marcus. "You're with her." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I'm with the family." Damien let out a humorless breath. "No, you're with the person who pays you." Celine's smile returned, cold. "Don't embarrass him, Damien. Loyalty is expensive." Nina's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time, it wasn't a threat. It was a screenshot, a drafted headline, already written, ready to be released. Billionaire CEO hides affair with Maid. Jealous wife fears for twins. Nina's stomach twisted. They had the story prepared before the crime finished happening. Nina whispered, shaking, "They're going to frame me." Damien looked at her, voice low. "I know." Celine's eyes glittered. "You can't stop a story once it's fed to the right mouths." Damien's jaw clenched. "Watch me." He turned and walked out of the nursery with one controlled step, then another, like a man moving away from a fire to grab the only extinguisher that mattered. Nina followed, because her legs moved before her mind could decide. Damien didn't go to his office first. He went to the security hub, an unmarked room behind the library, where estate feeds and logs were monitored. Marcus followed too, tense, as if he knew Damien was about to find something. Damien stood before the wall of monitors and typed fast. Then he froze. Multiple camera feeds were offline. Nursery hallway, garage, service gate, pool house corridor. Damien's voice dropped. "She's blacking out the house." Nina's throat tightened. "Can she do that?" Damien's eyes hardened. Only if Marcus gave her admin. Marcus's jaw clenched. "Sir." Damien cut him off. Where is the medical wing feed? Marcus didn't answer. Damien turned slowly. Where is it? Marcus's eyes flicked for half a second toward the corner monitor. Nina saw it. Damien saw it. Damien smiled without warmth. Thank you. Marcus stepped forward, tense. Sir, stop. Damien's voice sharpened. Nina, go, now. To my office. Lock the door. Don't let anyone in. Nina blinked. What about the baby? Damien's eyes didn't soften. I'm getting him back. Go. Nina ran. She ran through corridors that suddenly felt hostile, like the walls themselves had been bought. She reached Damien's office and slammed the door, locking it, breathing hard. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Run to the medical wing. That's where he is. Nina's heart stopped. She stared at the message. Trap or help? Then another message followed immediately. They'll say you kidnapped him. But they can't lie if you record it. Nina's blood turned ice. Record it. She opened her camera app, set it to record video, and kept it in her coat pocket with the lens barely exposed. Then she unlocked the office door and slipped out. She moved through service corridors like a ghost toward the private medical wing Celine called Wellness. When she reached the door, the keypad glowed. Access denied. Nina's hands shook. She backed away, breathing hard. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned. Marcus. 2 guards. Marcus's voice was calm, but his eyes were tight. Nina, you shouldn't be wandering. Nina swallowed, forcing her voice steady. I'm looking for the bathroom. Marcus's mouth tightened. You're lying. Nina's pulse spiked. Marcus stepped closer. Mrs. Cross says you're unstable. Nina's voice trembled. Where is the baby? Marcus's eyes flicked again, just a fraction, toward the medical wing door. Nina saw it. She understood. She did the only thing she could. She ran. Marcus shouted, Stop! Nina sprinted down the corridor, lungs burning, and slammed into a side utility door she'd seen staff use for deliveries. It had a keyhole. Her fingers shook as she tried her small service key set. One key caught. The lock turned. The door opened. Nina slipped inside and slammed it shut, locking it behind her. Silence. Then a baby's cry. Close. Nina's breath caught. She followed the sound through the sterile corridor until she reached a glass partition. Behind it, an exam room. And there, on a padded table, lay the missing twin, swaddled, face red from crying. Celine stood beside him, holding a syringe. Nina's blood turned to ice. Celine turned slowly, eyes widening, then narrowing into fury. You, she hissed. Nina's voice cracked. Put it down. Celine smiled, too calm. You shouldn't have come. Nina stepped closer, shaking. He needs his brother. Celine's eyes glittered. He needs silence. Nina stared at the syringe. What is that? Celine's tone was casual, cruel, something to help him sleep. Babies cry, it's embarrassing. Nina's stomach turned. Embarrassing. That was how Celine measured a baby's need. Nina whispered, You're going to drug him. Celine shrugged lightly. I drug what needs to be controlled. Nina froze. Those words didn't feel new. They felt like an echo from Nina's own missing memories. Celine leaned in, voice low. You don't remember. That's the best part. You don't remember what you agreed to. Nina's throat tightened. I agreed to nothing. Celine smiled. You agreed by being poor. Nina flinched. Celine lifted the syringe slightly. Take one more step and I'll make sure you go back to forgetting. Nina's hands shook. She could hear pounding at the outer door now, Marcus shouting, guards forcing their way in. Nina's mind raced. If she lunged, Celine could stab her or the baby. If she froze, Celine would drug the baby and walk out with him while the guards restrained Nina. Then a new sound cut through the room. A baby's cry from the corridor, the other twins' cry, and Damien's voice, distant but sharp. Where is he? Nina's breath caught. Damien had followed. He had brought the other twin. Celine's eyes flicked toward the door with a flash of panic. In that tiny moment of distraction, Nina moved. Not toward Celine, toward the baby. Celine reacted instantly, swinging the syringe hand toward Nina. The needle scraped Nina's forearm. A sharp sting. Nina didn't stop. She grabbed the baby, pressed him to her chest, and turned. Celine screamed, "Stop her!" The outer door burst open. Marcus and the guards flooded in. Damien appeared behind them, face wild, holding the other twin in one arm, his free hand extended like he was ready to fight, with bare hands. His eyes locked onto Nina holding the baby. Relief and terror collided in his expression. Celine stepped forward, furious. "She attacked me." Nina gasped, shaking. She was going to drug him. Celine snapped, "I was calming him." Damien's voice went low, lethal. "Celine, what's in the syringe?" Celine's eyes flashed. Postnatal sedative. Prescribed. Damien's gaze cut to the cabinets. "Then show me the prescription." Celine's smile faltered for half a second. Damien noticed. He stepped toward the cabinet. Marcus moved to block him. Damien stared at Marcus. "Move." Marcus didn't. Damien's voice rose. "Sharp! Move!" Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. Damien opened the cabinet. Inside were labeled vials, syringes, and a stack of files. Damien pulled one file out. His face went pale. He held it up. The name on the file wasn't Celine. It was Nina Morales. Damien's voice cracked. "What is this?" Nina's knees weakened. Celine's eyes widened, then hardened into pure rage. "That," Celine said softly, "is why you will all be quiet." Damien flipped pages. Medical release forms, medication logs, a schedule, and one phrase printed in a sterile font that made Nina's vision blur. Memory suppression protocol. Nina's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Damien turned to Celine slowly, eyes burning. "You've done this before." Celine's smile sharpened. "Of course," Nina whispered, shaking. "To me." Celine looked at her with contempt. To anyone who threatens the story, Nina's arm burned where the needle scraped her, warmth spreading under her skin. She looked down, a thin red line. Her breathing quickened. Whatever Celine had, even a trace, was now inside Nina. Nina whispered, terrified, "Damien, my arm." Damien's eyes snapped to it, then to Celine. His voice turned deadly calm. "Call an ambulance." Celine laughed. "Do it. Bring police. Bring doctors. And I'll tell them you and your maid had an affair. I'll tell them she's blackmailing you. I'll tell them she tried to steal the babies." Damien's jaw clenched. Celine pointed at Nina's uniform. "They'll believe the maid is crazy." The guards shifted, uncertain, caught between wealth and truth. Damien pulled out his phone, opened a secure recording app, and aimed it at Celine. "Say it again," Damien said quietly. "Tell me what you did." Celine's eyes narrowed. "Stop recording." Damien didn't stop. "Tell me you used medical suppression on Nina. Tell me you planned to frame her. Tell me you kidnapped my son." Celine lifted her chin. "Fine. Yes, I arranged it. I controlled it. Because without me you'd have no perfect family image, no heirs, no life to sell." Damien's breath caught. Celine continued, voice steady. "And now you'll choose. Me or the maid." Nina swayed. Damien looked at the babies, then at Nina, then at Celine. And in his eyes, something settled. Not hesitation. Decision. "Marcus," Damien said, voice like stone, "detain her." Marcus froze. Celine laughed sharply. "He won't." Damien's voice rose. "Detain her, or you're an accomplice." Marcus's face tightened. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then Marcus moved, grabbing Celine's wrist. Celine jerked back, shocked. Marcus's voice was tight. "Ma'am, stop." Damien spoke into his phone, calm and clear. "Emergency. Private medical suite at the Cross Estate. Possible poisoning. Child endangerment. Kidnapping." "Celine screamed, you idiot." Nina's knees buckled. Damien caught her, taking one baby gently from her arms. Nina, Damien said softly, stay with me. Nina's voice was a whisper. They called me Mum. Damien's eyes tightened. I know. As sirens approached in the distance, Celine struggled against Marcus's grip, screaming about lies and humiliation and reputation. But the babies were safe. For the moment, and the truth had finally crawled into the light. The ambulance lights painted the Cross estate in pulsing red and white, like the mansion itself had finally been forced to admit it had a heartbeat. Nina lay on the living room sofa under a blanket, her forearm bandaged, her skin still burning where the needle had scraped her. Every few seconds, dizziness rolled through her like a wave, and she kept blinking as if her eyes could clear the feeling away. Damien stood over her with both twins close, refusing to let anyone separate them from his line of sight. One baby slept fitfully in a bassinet beside the couch. The other was pressed against Damien's shoulder, tiny fingers curled into his shirt, like he was anchoring himself to the only steady thing left. Celine sat at the far end of the room, restrained more by shock than by Marcus's grip. Her hair was perfect. Her face was not. She kept glancing toward the twins like they were property being inventoried before confiscation. A paramedic looked at Nina's arm, and then up at Damien. Was this an injection attempt? Damien's voice was flat. Yes. She had a syringe in her hand. Celine laughed softly, brittle. Allegedly. Damien didn't argue. He lifted his phone. I have her confession on recording. Celine's smile twitched. How cute. You think a recording makes you brave. It didn't make him brave. It made him dangerous. Because now, Celine couldn't rewrite the moment. She could only try to bury it. Nina's eyelids fluttered. She whispered, almost to herself, my file had my name. Damien leaned closer. I saw it. Nina's voice shook. So I'm not imagining it. Damien's jaw tightened. No, you were made to doubt yourself. That's how they keep you quiet. The paramedic stood. We need to transport her. Toxicology. If there's sedative exposure, we don't gamble. Damien nodded. Do it. Celine leaned forward, eyes flashing. You're taking the maid to the hospital over a scratch? Damien finally looked at her, and his gaze didn't carry anger so much as disgust. It's not a scratch. It's evidence. Celine's lips curled. You're going to ruin us to save her. Damien's voice dropped. I'm going to ruin the lie to save my children. The front door opened again. This time it wasn't wealth walking in. It was authority. 2 officers and a detective entered with clipped, efficient movement. The detective's eyes scanned the room once. Nina's bandage, the twins, Celine's posture, and then settled on Damien. Mr. Cross, the detective said, we received an emergency call regarding child endangerment and suspected poisoning. Celine's expression shifted instantly into performance. Thank goodness. My husband is having a breakdown. He's accusing me of... Damien cut her off. She kidnapped one of the twins and attempted to sedate the baby. Then, she tried to sedate Nina. The detective's gaze sharpened. Are the children safe? Damien nodded. Both here. Celine laughed. Too loud. This is insanity. Damien handed his phone to the detective. Watch. The detective watched in silence. Celine's recorded voice filled the room, cold and clear, admitting the arrangement, the control, the plan. When the clip ended, the detective looked at Celine. Mrs. Cross, he said, you are being detained pending investigation for kidnapping, assault, and unlawful administration of controlled substances. Celine's face didn't collapse into fear. It sharpened into rage. You can't do this, she hissed. Do you know who I am? The detective nodded once. A suspect. Celine's eyes snapped to Damien like a curse. You'll regret this. Damien didn't blink. I already regret marrying you. Celine was escorted out, still holding her chin high, still trying to look untouchable. But Nina saw the truth in Celine's eyes as she passed the twins. Celine wasn't grieving. She was calculating. Nina's dizziness worsened as the paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher. She clutched the blanket around her like armor. Damien leaned close. "I'm coming with you," Nina whispered. Faint. The twins. Damien's voice was firm. "They come too. No one takes them anywhere without me." On the ride to the hospital, Nina stared at the ceiling and tried to breathe through the nausea. Lights streaked past the ambulance windows like smears of paint. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, but she couldn't lift her hand to look. At the hospital, Damien demanded a private room and refused to let the twins leave his sight. A nurse tried to insist on neonatal protocol. Damien's gaze made her stop. "No," he said quietly. "They stay here." A detective stepped in again for statements, but Damien held up a hand. "Not until she's stable." The detective nodded. Understood. Hours passed. Then, the door opened again. An older woman entered. Elegant, silver-haired, coat too expensive for a hospital corridor. She looked at Damien like a mother arriving to stop a son from ruining himself. "Damien," she said softly, "what have you done?" Damien's face went still. "Evelyn." Nina blinked, confused. Damien's voice was cold. "My mother." Evelyn Cross stepped closer, eyes flicking once to the twins, once to Nina, once to the police presence outside the room. "You involved the police," Evelyn said. "Hospitals. Scandal." Damien didn't blink. "Celine kidnapped our child." Evelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. "Celine is emotional. Postpartum. She needs care, not handcuffs." Damien's voice sharpened. She tried to inject Nina with a sedative. Evelyn's eyes flickered. Not surprise. Recognition. Damien leaned forward, voice low. "You knew." Evelyn's smile returned, controlled. "Don't be dramatic." Damien's eyes burned. "Stop calling truth dramatic." Evelyn turned to Nina with a soft voice that felt like a glove over a fist. "Ms. Morales, I'm sorry for the confusion. But when you work in a high-profile home, boundaries blur." Nina's throat tightened. "Why does Celine have a medical file on me?" Evelyn's smile tightened. "I'm not sure." Damien's voice snapped. "Liar." Evelyn's gaze flashed. "Damien." Damien stood, towering. "How long have you been cleaning up Celine's crimes?" Evelyn's voice dropped, icy. "I clean up this family's messes, including yours." The threat was subtle, but it landed. Evelyn stepped closer, lowering her voice. "If you continue this, your board panics, your investors run, your company bleeds. Is that Maid worth it?" Nina flinched at the word. Damien's jaw clenched. "Her name is Nina." Evelyn sighed. "Nina, is she worth losing everything?" Damien's eyes didn't soften. "If I have to lose everything to stop being owned by you and Celine, then yes." Evelyn's expression cracked for a second, then hardened, and then she opened the first believable false lead like a new door in the dark. "Damien," Evelyn said softly, "are you sure those twins are yours?" Silence hit the room like a wall. Nina's breath caught. Damien's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Evelyn's smile was thin. "You heard me. Celine has been unstable. She's made choices without telling you everything. Are you certain your certainty is real?" Damien stared at her, and Nina felt the purpose. Destabilize him. Make him doubt. Make him hesitate before the court could lock the truth. Evelyn turned toward the door. "Think carefully," she murmured. "Powerful women don't lose gracefully." She left, and Nina's chest tightened, because Evelyn didn't feel like a concerned mother. She felt like the architect returning to inspect a collapsing building. Later that day, the toxicology results confirmed trace sedative exposure. Nina's throat tightened. "So, she did inject me." The doctor nodded. "Trace amount. Enough to cause dizziness." Damien's jaw clenched. The doctor added, If there's history of sedation, it could explain memory gaps, but we'd need medical history. Nina's stomach dropped. Memory gaps. Damien looked at her, voice steady. We'll get your history. Nina whispered, shaking. My family won't talk. Damien's eyes hardened. Then we find the pressure point. Ria Calder arrived, a former prosecutor turned private attorney, sharp-eyed and allergic to intimidation. She listened to Damien's summary, then looked at Nina. We need court-ordered DNA testing with independent chain of custody. We need subpoenas for clinic records. We follow money trails. Nina's voice cracked. They'll call me a homewrecker. Ria nodded. They will, so we don't fight feelings. We fight facts. Damien's phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a blurry photo of a clinic document. Across the top, private fertility center. Circled in red, egg donor, L Cross. Damien's face went pale, Ria's eyes narrowed. L Cross? Damien's voice went hoarse. My sister. Lucinda, Nina's breath caught. Your wife used your sister's eggs? Damien's jaw tightened. Lucinda died 5 years ago. Silence. Ria's voice turned cold. If that's true, it's criminal. Damien stared at the twins and whispered, my mother, because Celine loved the spotlight, but Evelyn loved the blueprint. The next morning, Ria filed emergency motions. The court ordered independent DNA testing. The court granted temporary custody to Damien. The court allowed Nina supervised contact as a potential biological mother pending results. But Evelyn and Celine struck back fast. They leaked a second false lead, more sophisticated and more believable to professionals. They claimed the clinic made an embryo mix-up. A clerical error. They claimed Nina's name was on paperwork because she was a temporary intake mistake at the fertility center. They painted it as an unfortunate accident, not a crime. And they paired that claim with a poison gossip narrative. Damien and Nina were having an affair, and Nina had coached the twins to say mum. They released an edited nursery audio clip to the press, subtle, convincing, engineered, where a woman's whisper seemed to say the word before a baby repeated it. The internet exploded, and Nina watched herself become a villain in real time. That night, Nina sat in Damien's secure apartment, staring at the twins sleeping peacefully, while the world called her a liar. Damien stood by the window, eyes hard, and said, "They're trying to win in public because they're losing in court." Ria's phone rang. Her face tightened. Evelyn filed to bar Nina from contact. She's claiming Nina is emotionally manipulating minors. Nina's hands shook. They're going to take them from me again. Damien's voice was steady. Not if we break their lie with a bigger truth. Nina swallowed hard. What bigger truth? A new message hit Nina's phone. Unknown number. A video file. Nina's hands trembled as she opened it. A teenage girl lay on a clinic bed, pale, eyes half open. It was Nina. A doctor's voice increased the dose. She's remembering. A woman's voice, calm and cold, then make her forget. Evelyn's voice. And in the corner of the frame, half visible, stood a younger Celine, watching, learning. Nina's breath stopped. Ria's eyes narrowed. That's direct evidence. Damien's jaw clenched. Or a trap. Ria nodded. Evelyn doesn't hand you a weapon unless she thinks she controls what comes next. And she did. Because within hours, Nina's mother, Rosa Morales, was taken. A note was left. If you want your mother back, come alone to St. Brigid's. No lawyers, no cameras, no games. Nina's knees weakened. Damien's face turned to stone. We call the police. Nina's voice broke. If I don't go, she'll hurt her. Ria held Nina's gaze. We go smart. We go with invisible recording. We go with plainclothes nearby. We don't obey her rules. We pretend to. They went. St. Brigid's private wing, the same name that kept resurfacing like a fingerprint. They found Rosa restrained, They found Evelyn waiting. They found Celine seething. And Nina finally spoke, not as a maid, not as a victim, but as a witness. "I'm recording," Nina said. Evelyn smiled. "Then listen carefully." And Evelyn confessed, calmly, like she was explaining a business plan. "You were chosen because you were disposable," she told Nina. She admitted coercion. She admitted that fear makes signatures. She admitted using Lucinda's eggs to keep the bloodline intact. She admitted designing twins as a stronger story, a stronger brand, a stronger inheritance. Celine called Nina a tool. Evelyn called children spare parts. And Nina's stomach turned, but she kept recording. When Evelyn tried to lock the room, plainclothes officers stepped in. Evelyn was arrested for kidnapping and unlawful restraint. Celine screamed accusations about affairs and manipulation, but this time her story fell flat, because now there was evidence. The next morning, the DNA test happened under strict chain of custody. Independent lab. Court officer present. Sealed results. No blind spots. The twins were swabbed gently, crying until Nina's voice soothed them, and the quiet one said it again. Not perfectly, but clearly enough to freeze Celine a final time. "Mum." The results arrived. Ria opened the envelope. "The twins are biologically related to Nina Morales," she read. Nina's tears fell instantly. "They are biologically related to Damien Cross." Damien's eyes shut for a second. Relief and grief colliding. "They are not biologically related to Celine Cross." Celine's face shattered into rage and panic. "No," she whispered. "No. That's wrong." Ria's voice was calm. "It's science." From there, the system began to testify against itself. Subpoenas uncovered cross-family trust payments. The medical liaison was identified, Dr. Marina Kessler, fertility specialist on Evelyn's payroll. Donor bank records confirmed Lucinda's genetic material was accessed without valid consent, under forged authority. Marcus's bank transfers tied him to Evelyn's shell companies. Forensics proved the nursery audio leak was edited, with metadata inconsistencies and splicing artifacts. The affair narrative collapsed. The embryo mix-up narrative collapsed. The moral reversal became unavoidable. The maid wasn't a homewrecker. She was a mother stolen from. The millionaire wife wasn't a victim. She was a participant. The elegant mother-in-law wasn't a protector. She was an architect. Charges followed: Evelyn, kidnapping, coercion, fraud, conspiracy, unlawful restraint, abuse. Celine, kidnapping, attempted unlawful administration of sedatives, conspiracy, obstruction. Dr. Kessler, license revoked, criminal charges. Marcus, accomplice charges. The clinic, raided, records seized, more victims identified. Family court recognized Nina as the biological mother with protected parental rights and a structured reunification plan centered on the twins' well-being. Damien retained custody with oversight. Celine was denied unsupervised contact pending criminal proceedings. Nina's first night with the twins, legally and safely, wasn't a celebration. It was trembling. She sat on the nursery floor with both babies asleep against her chest, their breath warm, their weight real. Rosa sat nearby, crying softly. Damien stood in the doorway, silent, as if afraid to disturb a moment he knew he didn't deserve to interrupt. Nina whispered, broken, "I don't remember giving birth." Rosa sobbed, "But you did." Nina's eyes filled. "I don't remember their first breath." Damien's voice was low. "Then we give you every breath from now." Months later, the Cross Mansion stood quieter, emptied of lies. Celine's sponsors vanished. Her charity boards removed her. Her brand dissolved. Evelyn sat behind glass asking for access she was denied, and Nina healed slowly, unevenly, but forward. Some nights she woke shaking, hearing phantom monitors. Some mornings she stared at her own reflection and felt two timelines inside her skin. but the twins anchored her. One reached for her hair when sleepy. The other pressed his face into her shoulder like he knew that scent was home. On a quiet evening, Nina stood by the window watching the twins sleep. Damien stepped beside her and said, "I can't undo what they did." Nina nodded. "I know." Damien swallowed. "But I can spend my life making sure our sons never learn that control is love." Nina looked at him, eyes tired but steady. "Then, teach them the opposite." Damien nodded. "I will." Nina watched her sleeping children and understood the final truth. The world tried to erase her with contracts, sedatives, headlines, and shame. But the truth crawled out anyway. Not through money, not through power, through one word, spoken by two tiny mouths that refused to belong to the wrong woman. "She ordered me out," Nina whispered. "But the twins called me Mum. And the truth walked me back in.